Hey everyone, it's good to see you. This is Marjy. Welcome to Humanity Chats. Today we have quite an interesting guest joining us from Ghana, West Africa. We're going to be talking about the state of the Republic. As some of you may know, the Ghana elections are coming up. These are exciting times, and we have Godfred Akoto Boafo, who happens to be my brother. Yes, yes. Joining us today, we're going to talk about the upcoming elections, the electoral process, and he's just going to share his thoughts with us. And so at this time, we're going to play our usual intro music to get Godfred into the house. If you're watching, thank you so much for joining us. Share this with your network. If you're on YouTube, send this to your WhatsApp groups. If you are on Facebook, hey, do a story. Let's get more people to join us. If you're on Twitter, why don't you retweet this? And for our podcast listeners, welcome. It is always a pleasure to talk to you. We appreciate you for signing on all the time. You know what? I was trying to share this as a story, and for some reason, I couldn't do it on my computer. So you're going to have to help me out. We're going to bring Godfred into the house, and let's go. Hello.
Hi. Greetings from Accra.
Yes, greetings from South Carolina.
It's a pleasure to be here, March. Thanks for having me. Doing big sister things, but hey, what can I say?
Yeah, this is kind of weird. I don't even know what to call you on this program.
On this one, you can call me Godfred. You're not allowed to call me Kweku.
Yeah, I know. Right? I'll give you a knock. I'll give you a knock on your head. Hey, guys, welcome to Humanity Chats. If you're watching, let us know where you're watching from. I know this is not our usual time, but you know, we had to catch our Ghana guests because they would have been going to bed. It is, I think it's about 8 p.m. in Ghana right now. And so we're going to have a replay 7 p.m. Eastern back in the United States. But for now, if you're here, share this with your network. Invite them to come learn about the electoral process. Thank you to our YouTube subscribers for joining us. Thanks to Facebook. Thanks to our Twitter. Everybody out there, our podcast listeners. Godfred, it is a joy to have you with us today. And just to kick us off, would you want to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I guess my name is Godfred Akoto Boafo. I'm a journalist. I've been doing this for about almost 15 years now. Yes. Started off as a hobby back at the university, ended up becoming a full-time job. I've worked in a couple of multimedia platforms. I started off freelance in television and radio, and then ended up starting a digital platform. The startup has ended up becoming perhaps the biggest digital platform in the country right now. It's called Pulse Ghana. I went to Kenya to start another one called Business Insider Africa, from based on a franchise that I'm sure Americans would know quite well, Business Insider. I was the founding and managing editor of the Sub-Saharan edition of Business Insider. And then I relocated back to Ghana about 2 years ago to join Citi FM, which is where my career actually started a couple of years back. So this is my second stint at Citi FM, where currently I'm the current affairs and politics editor. I'm also a host on the Citi Breakfast Show. For those of you who don't know, I suggest you tune in every morning if you can, where you are, if the time will allow you. It's the most listened to breakfast show in the country. Just to give a comparison, it's basically like listening to Good Morning America, but watching Good Morning America on television, but just a radio form of it. We have very important conversations in very interesting ways. Yeah, so that's all about me.
Well, it's good to hear about you in a professional sense. I am so proud of you. You can tell with my big sister grin, my 85 teeth were out. Listening to you, telling us about how you started Pulse and how you worked in other parts of Africa and started the Business Insider Africa edition. Thank you so much for joining us today. And as you know, we're here because you are on the ground in Ghana. And for this program, our listeners are not only people abroad, but also people out in Ghana. We just want to know a little bit more about the electoral process of Ghana, how everything is done, our democracy, the parties that are running. If you can just give us a brief overview. And for our audience, if you're here, welcome. Let's hear from you in the chat room. If you have questions for Godfred, just drop it in there. He will be able to answer it. I know that there are a few comments that have already popped up, but what we're going to do is to have Godfred give us that overview before we go to the comments. So shoot, baby. Oh, I'm sorry. I should not have called you baby. I mean, this is hard. Yes, let's go, Godfred.
Okay, so primarily this will be the eighth election Ghana has held um, since it went back into constitutional rule in 1992, which is what is primarily called the Fourth Republic. The first election in 1992 saw the formation of parties like the NPP and the NDC, as well as a couple of others, but primarily these were the two big ones. Jerry John Rawlings won that election in 1992. The opposition then, the NPP, basically did not contest the parliamentary election because they felt that it was not a fair election. So they ended up publishing what became known internationally as the stolen verdict. So in 1992, Ghana's elections, after Ghana's elections, we had basically a one-sided parliament, a parliament that was 98% held by the NDC and three independent candidates. In 1996, there was a bit more involvement by the international community in guaranteeing that the democratic process was actually a democratic process that could stand the test of legitimacy. So there was a significant amount of funding that went into that election. And the NPP this time did contest the parliamentary election. They lost the presidential election again to Jerry John Rawlings, but managed to win a couple of seats in parliament. So one would say that 1996 basically was the start of a legitimate form of democracy in Ghana in the Fourth Republic. Again, we had elections in 2000. Now, by this time, this election is quite an important election because 2000 was the election that established Ghana's democratic credentials, because we had a lot of African leaders who had refused to leave office after losing elections or after their terms were up. And there was a general fear that Jerry John Rawlings, who was then president, having ruled the country on and off basically since the 80s, would be unwilling to leave even though his time was up and he had run the country for 2 terms. But he did do that. And the candidate that he had selected for 2000 to succeed him, a tax professor called John Evans Mills, lost the election to the MPP candidate. Another lawyer, former diplomat called John Ejikum Kufuor, he had appealed quite massively to the working class to give his party a chance, and they seem to have put that message. And so in the year 2000, the NPP did win the election. And like I said, that was it's an election that can be underlined because it established Ghana as a working democracy. We had a transition and we had an exchange of power from one party to the other. Kufuor also did his 2 terms. And then in 2008, the candidate who succeeded him to contest on the ticket of his party was Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Now, the name might sound familiar. That is the current president of the Republic. He contested his first election at that time as a candidate. He had contested the flag bearership previously, but had not won, but was on the ticket of the MPP after Kufuor left office in 2008. Now, he lost that election to the NDC's John Evans Mills, who had also been contesting the election. Again, the name sounds familiar because he was the one chosen to succeed former President Jerry John Rawlings after he left office in 2000. So 8 years after his first run at the presidency, he did become the president of the republic. Unfortunately, he passed away at the early stages of his second term. And so, for the first time, Ghana basically lost a sitting president. He was replaced by his vice president, John Dramani Mahama, who assumed the ticket of the NDC for the election in 2012. And he did win that election again against Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo. He tried to win the second term in 2016. Unfortunately, he lost to Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo. And we are here in 2020. It's the same two candidates who are going head to head. Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo is the incumbent, and John Dramani Mahama is the former president looking to come back to finish a second term. Now, the unique thing about this situation is Ghana's democracy imposes a two-term limit. So we have Akufo-Addo looking for a mandate for his second term, and we have a president who has already contested a single term and is looking for another term. So there was a bit of a constitutional conversation about this. People were saying, okay, since he finished one term, some said, okay, but that wasn't his actual term. So we've gone back and forth, but what has been established is that he can't run for this particular term. After that, he cannot make another run if he does win. So it's basically an election of second terms. Now, our election is a fairly simple process. It's a first past the post election, simple majority. That means 50 plus 1. The first party that gets the 50 plus 1 gets to win the presidency. Now, we also have the parliamentary elections happening. There are 275 constituencies around the country in the 16 regions that we have. And there are candidates who are going to be contesting this race as well. At the moment, parliamentary majority is held by the governing New Patriotic Party. And we've not had a situation in our electoral history where we've had a different party in government and a different party being the majority in parliament. That has not yet happened. We've always had that kind of balance. The party that wins elections, the presidential election, is the party that controls parliament as well. So, and I would say that is the makeup of our electoral process as things stand.
Wow, that's amazing, because there are some people that may not be familiar with any electoral process in Africa, because sometimes in the Western world, they show the wars and people, there have been people who even think that people in Ghana live on trees. So it's amazing to get this background and this history. So what is the feeling on the ground now between the two parties? What are you hearing?
Well, I always like to say, let's give a fair ground to everybody. So this is an election not between two parties primarily. It's an election between 12 candidates. Of course, the MPP and the NDC are the most powerful parties. They control basically 80, let's say 90% of the electoral votes based on previous history. But there are other parties that are contesting this particular election. So let's give them their due. As well. But between the two parties, both of them are quite confident. The New Patriotic Party, I'll start from there, the governing party, quite confident in what they have been able to achieve over the past 4 years. Now, it's interesting, the NPP, they are basically a political complexity, I would say, in the sense that this is a party that buys into a capitalist ideology, but is practicing social democracy, which is the mantra of the opposition NDC. So we've seen since coming into power the implementation of several social welfare policies. So the biggest one, of course, is the free senior high school policy that was passed. Now, this was the lead campaign promise in the build up to the 2016 election. And a lot of people say that that is the promise that won them the election. And within 6 months of coming to government, the law was passed and this has been implemented. And it has proven pretty popular with parents who don't have to pay school fees for their kids in secondary school or what one might call high school. So that has been the lead success story of the government. They've also tried to implement other policies. So what they have called One District, One Factory, which is basically a policy to provide every district in the country with some kind of factory that can employ people and basically lead the industrialization surge for the country. I must say that that particular policy has not proven altogether successful. There's a lot of controversy around it. And as a journalist, my understanding of what the original thought was, it's not what the implementation has been. Although the government seems reticent to admit that it has changed what the original policy was upon assumed in government, because the original policy, the original political promise that was made prior to the election was that these would be nascent industries that would be built in every single district in the country to provide employment. But upon coming to power, we were then told that no, this would be a private sector driven endeavor based on profits. And so basically, we've had these factories being placed in places where investors think that they are more beneficial. Now, that makes sense, definitely, but that was not the original campaign promise. So, among other things as well, there's the Planting for Food and Jobs, which one must say has proven quite successful previously. Last year was more successful than this year, primarily because of COVID this year. But last year was a year where some of the main staple crops of the country were not imported based on the success of the Planting for Food and Jobs program. So on the policy side and on the tangible side, one would say that the NPP is feeling they're in a good position because they do have quite a bit to show the electorate in the build up to the election. So there's a significant sense of optimism in what they're doing. And you can get that in the campaign messages that are being pushed around. You can get that sense as well with their parliamentary candidates anytime they go around to campaign. Now, if you look at the NDC, basically they're saying that, look, a lot of these policies, these social interventions, which are unlike the NPP, have been implemented haphazardly and could have been implemented better. So we are the ones who can implement it because that is what we do historically. They're also saying that, look, we made a couple of mistakes when we were in government 4 years ago, but we think that we've learned our lessons and we can correct these things. And corruption was a significant factor, was a significant reason why the NDC government lost power 4 years ago. And it's something that they've tried to say, look, you people said we're corrupt and you kicked us out, but we've happening over the past 4 years and have shown that perhaps we're not as bad as you thought. This government is pretty corrupt. And so it would make sense to bring us back to continue some of the good things that we were doing. So they've also made a couple of big promises. This, for instance, what is called the Big Push. Now, if you look at their manifesto, the Big Push basically is a $10 billion investment in several sectors of the economy to drive the economy, to basically restart the economy post-COVID. And they've also, among other things, promised some significant policies in primary health care, which they are saying is going to be free, which is quite interesting. They have also promised some level of intervention in the secondary school sector and in the vocational school sector as well. They've also promised some policies in the industrialization sector. So it's been a pretty interesting campaign. But on the NDC side, there hasn't been one particular flagship policy that has stood out as the main theme of their campaign. And so it's been basically a very defensive campaign that they have run, where they are trying to highlight the corruption and the wastage of Ghanaian resources by the sitting government, as opposed to touting their own policies significantly. So now, if you talk about the general feeling of the populace around what the two parties are selling, there have been a couple of surveys, there have been a couple of polls. It's pretty hard to place because when it comes to this side of the road, people are pretty skeptical about telling you how they are going to vote. So people look at polls with a bit of a raised eyebrow, but they're important. Okay, so it does look like on the presidential side of things, the NPP is feeling quite confident. And it does look like people still are not fed up with the NPP as yet. As to whether it will be enough people to give them a first round victory, only time will tell. But they are quite optimistic they can get that through. But it is the parliamentary election this year, though, that has the attraction. And for a lot of political watchers, for a lot of journalists, there's a feeling that we might head towards an election and have one where the face of parliament changes, because a lot of people have the democracy in Ghana has evolved to the position where people are now able to separate the activities of the executive from the legislature. So the president does his thing, but people have now come to understand that the member of parliament is the one who represents the community, who represents them personally. And so if that person is not performing, it is not a slight on the president. They are going to punish that person. So there are quite a lot of members of parliament who will be feeling uncomfortable this year. And also, if you look at the electoral history of this country, quite a few seats were lost by the NDC to the NPP, basically because they did not present a united front during the last election. They were independent candidates in certain constituencies. Those things do not exist for them this particular election. But those problems do exist for the NPP, where they have almost some of their biggest seats have independent candidates contesting, and that has proven a big problem. So if you listen to their campaigns and if you watch the itinerary of the president, for instance, he has made it a point to visit constituencies where there are very strong independent candidates who might cut down the votes of his party, and has tried to tell his support base that, look, do not vote for these people. They might belong to our party and are disappointed right now, but do not vote for them. Voting for them will be a waste of the vote. Just vote for the party that you know. And it's a message that they keep pushing in some of these constituencies. Now, I could mention a few. A constituency like Fomena in the Central region is quite dicey right now, because the incumbent member of parliament is contesting as an independent candidate because he lost the primaries and he felt he was not treated fairly. So that's a dicey seat, and it's a seat that has always been held by the New Patriotic Party. Now, another seat to look out for with regards to that will be one in the eastern region. It's called in the western region, Takwanswayem, which is a mining community, where the sitting member of parliament is one of the more powerful parliamentarians. He heads the mining committee as well in parliament. Now he's facing a very strong local representative and a woman called Madam Joycelyn Tando, and she's very, very strong on the ground. So these are some of the seats that are giving the incumbent government a headache. And it's honestly speaking, I must say, Parliament as a journalist will be the focus of my coverage. The presidential election, everybody seems to have a fair idea where it will go, but Parliament seems to be will have the eyes of political watchers and journalists.
Wow. Thank you so much for this update. I can in the US, as you know, President-elect Joe Biden got more votes, but then there were some Republican women that people did not expect that they were going to win their seats or, take their seats from their Democratic contemporaries. And so Parliament becomes a dicey thing. And you said something about how based on performance somebody could lose. I know that in Ghana, it could also be based on money and gifting, right?
Well, yes, that is there, because there is a sense of distance between the constituents and the members of parliament. There are significant, based on poverty, and there are large chunks of the country that are impoverished when it comes to these things. People seem to think that, look, members of parliament only show up every 4 years to solicit for votes. And so there is a certain level of transaction, or should I say clientelism, that exists between a member of parliament and his constituents, where they say, look, if you want my vote, well, then you have to provide me with A, B, C, and D, because if I do vote for you, I'm not going to see your face for the next 4 years. But I honestly also do think that that level of thinking is diminishing because people are beginning to associate a member of parliament with much more, which is why I said in my initial comments that the parliamentary election will be a lot more difficult this year. A lot more members of parliament will not sleep easily on the night of the election because they know that irrespective of what they give, irrespective of how many people they give money to, they might not just be able to get enough people to vote them back into parliament based on just how people feel the MPs have not impacted their daily lives. Now, the thing about being a member of parliament in Ghana is this. A member of parliament's job is purely one of lawmaking and lobbying. But the campaign process is one where these individuals end up making all kinds of developmental promises. Now, you are not that, the members of parliament are not those agents. There are other people in local authorities who are supposed to do that. But because they end up making these promises, they end up having to live up to these promises. And most of them are unable to. That is where the agitation comes in. And sometimes the gift giving that you're talking about and obvious vote buying, let's be clear about it, this vote buying and it's illegal, comes in.
Yeah, but with what you're telling me, it looks like the state of the republic has improved because people are now getting to understand the democratic process a bit more than it was in the past.
Certainly, and I'm very happy about that because what it does tell me is perhaps in the next 8 years we could have a situation like you've had in the U.S. Quite often, where you have a red government and a blue Senate, or vice versa. And there are those who say perhaps that might be what Ghana needs to jump the developmental hurdle, because then we will get a bit more scrutiny with loans, with documentation. We might get a bit more proper development. So I think it's a slow process, but we are catching up with how democracy works.
We could get a bit more development, or we could just, knowing our culture, we could just end up being vindictive and just stopping the process. If it's not my idea, then it's not going to move forward. Let's go to the chat room and see what some of our people have said. Okay, we have some viewers here. Sylvia said it's interesting to know about parliamentary elections being dicey. I guess and Sylvia is out of New Jersey. So I guess, for some of us, we had no idea. We just thought that, okay, it's the election. And so we were focused on presidential. So she's appreciating that. You have a fan here who says it's always refreshing to hear you speak. And that you're a solid guy. Yes, he is a solid guy. I am a proud big sister listening to my brother talk so intelligently. This is just amazing. I am super impressed too. Thanks for the comments. We have another comment here. Yes, so Amy Atta is asking that when we say gifting, are we talking bribery? Do you want to go into that, Godfred?
Basically, that is what it is. It is. I would say it's vote buying. I wouldn't say bribery, but it's a slippery slope. You're not supposed to give gifts to people and tell them vote for me, but that happens here a lot because the members of parliament, or potential members of parliament, or candidates for that matter, feel that, look, these are the needs of the people. So, for instance, if I'm a candidate in a coastal constituency, so I have a lot of fishermen, I have a lot of fishmongers, I have a lot of traders among my constituents. I'm saying I'm providing outboard motors, I'm providing maybe some pans, I'm providing some drying spots for the fishmongers, and this happens before the election process. Now, the reason why this is a bit of a problem is if this was the normal standard, where one would say, okay, over the course of the 4-year period, this happens on a consistent level. So it's a standard process. One would then say, okay, fine, this is what happens all the time. But these things only happen 3 months to an election, where suddenly you have all kinds of candidates showing up and giving you pans and bowls and buckets, and they make sure that you know who it is coming from. Uh, so at the moment, the money side of things is not in terms of getting physical cash. It's not as pervasive as it used to be because, of course, the electoral pool is so large. How many people can you give money to? There are 17 million people on the electoral register. The largest constituency is almost 200,000 people. How many people can you pay? So it will become an extremely expensive venture if you decide to actually vote by with actual cash. But you find a lot of candidates who give away all kinds of things. We've had a lot of bicycles being given away. We've had a lot of motorcycles being given away. We've had books being given away, tables and chairs being given away. So people have even built hospitals and police stations and water stations for communities in the build up to the election.
Wow. So the build up to the election is kind of like the time to get everything that you probably have on your list. I mean, and so what happens when you lose? Do you go and tell them, hey, I need my bike back? I need my...
Well, I could tell you a couple of stories about some members of parliament who have done that. And we also have that happen in the primary. For instance, in the last primary, in one of the constituencies, one candidate gave away bicycles to delegates, about 500 bicycles to delegates, and lost the election. He went around with a truck and collected every single bicycle from the delegates. So it does happen, but we haven't seen a losing parliamentary candidate go around collecting gifts before. That I haven't seen.
Oh my goodness, are you kidding me? He went to collect his bicycles. He's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, we see people here. We have a Facebook viewer, Mami Ya, watching from Wisconsin. We have folks from YouTube. We have Mercy Lugutera watching from Maryland. Oh my God. We have our mom watching. She says from Ghana, Mama. We have good evening watching from Accra, Ghana, from Mami Brago. Hi, Mami Brago. We have Pat Mati giving you a thumbs up. We have Rachel Dodu saying greetings from Gastonia, North Carolina. Yes, and we have saying knock on head. Oh my goodness. I guess that was when I called you, I don't know, did I say baby or something like that? Yes. Well, viewers, thank you so much for checking in with us. Tell your network about this. I think Godfred is giving us very important information about this election. So now, Godfred, about the process on Monday. How many polling stations are there?
Well, quite a bit. We're looking at almost 34,000 or so, I think. So quite a lot.
Wow, that's a lot. And how are they being monitored?
Well, the thing about our electoral processes, and I'm very proud of it, we have an almost airtight electoral system. Now, there are a lot of elections. We've come a long way since 1992. There are a lot of elections in the sub-region that when they happen, people don't trust the process. Ours has been fine-tuned, and I think that post the 2012 election, we've been able to build a system, an electoral process and system that is almost watertight. It's not foolproof yet, but basically you can trust the results that you get 100%, because the result is, the process is such that once you vote in the morning, by voting starts at 7 in the morning, it ends at 5 p.m. After 5 p.m., there is a count. Now, the counting is done at the polling station. Now, these polling stations will have a party agent there. Every party has an agent at a polling station. Now, these agents represent the candidates in the constituency. So once the ballot boxes are open and they are counted, everybody takes note of what the numbers are. They are certified at the polling station because they are counted in the open. It's not like they are counted in a room somewhere. the ballot box is opened at the collation center, right in public view, and it's counted for everybody to see. After that, the results are basically certified at the polling station, where all the candidates the agents of the candidates have to sign and say, okay, at polling station A, candidate GAB polled 500 votes. I agree it was 500, and she agrees it was 500. And then the results are sent to the main collation center in that particular constituency. From there, it is sent to the regional collation center of the electoral, and then from the regional, it is sent to the national. So at every step of the way, there are agents in place to make sure the numbers will not change from point A up until the national. It is almost impossible to change those numbers. So once it gets to Accra, that is when you start seeing the big picture over a couple of hours. Now, for the presidency, it takes a bit of a while to get these results, to get the full picture. But for parliamentary candidates, some of them can know the results within 2 hours of the elections ending. The elections end at 5 o'clock. There are certain polling stations that are not so big. By 7 p.m., they can quickly tell you who won the parliamentary election in those places. So our process, it's one that our process is one that I'm very, very proud of. It's going to get stronger, but at the moment, it's one that you can trust once you get a result.
That's so impressive, that it's so airtight. That is impressive. Now, with COVID-19, how are you going to handle having all those people there?
Well, strict processes have been put in place. Special voting took place earlier this week. Now, in Ghana, special voting is basically early voting. So this was a voting process open to about 100,000 people, made up of journalists, emergency services, security services. Now, these are persons who ordinarily will be working on election day in one way or the other, so will not have time to vote. And the processes are quite tight. You get to the polling station in your mask. You will not be allowed to vote without a mask. That much has been made clear. Clear lines have been drawn as to enable social distancing. You wash your hands. You're given a sanitizer. You clean your hands. You vote. After that, you are asked to clean your hands again before you leave. So they've been able to put in place these processes. Now, what will be the difference between what happened on Monday is that the numbers were pretty small. On the day of the general election, there are a lot more numbers. So people are asking if the logistics of the Electoral Commission will be able to keep up. But they are pretty confident they will have more than enough to make sure that every person who comes through observes the social distancing protocol and other hygiene protocols.
Wow. This is impressive. So the mask mandate, is everybody going to wear a mask? Does it actually work in Ghana?
For the election, like I said, the rules are quite clear. You can decide not to wear the mask outside of the polling station, but if you do make it to the polling station without a mask, you are not going to be allowed to vote.
So do they have like armed guards enforcing that?
There are no, per the law, there are no armed guards allowed within 500 meters of a polling station. There are security personnel, they do not carry guns.
That's impressive. Now, viewers, if you're watching this, we're learning about the electoral process in Ghana, West Africa. It's amazing, the democracy at work. We're learning that there are different parties that contest for the elections. We're learning about the parliamentary process, the presidential process, the competitiveness. We're also learning that the people of Ghana are taking precautions knowing that COVID-19 is still alive and real and that there is a mask mandate. You have to wear your mask to go vote. And so this is all impressive, impressive stuff that Godfred is telling us. Now, Godfred, you said that your focus is going to be on the parliamentary election. So does that mean you will be traveling to different areas of the country? How does that work for journalists?
Yeah, okay. So Depends on where you work and how you work. So for me, I will be mostly indoors because, like I said, I work at an editorial level. So I might make a couple of rounds, but mostly I will be indoors because I'm also a presenter. So I will be on TV most of the time, either doing analysis or on radio doing analysis. But for other members of our news team, we have basically in every constituency about 25 people who are reporting from every constituency. That's a huge number because you multiply 20 plus by 275. That tells you the numbers we are working with as in like where I work at Citi FM and Citi TV to make sure that we are able to cover the elections effectively. So for journalists, it's a long day. Your day starts at 7, going around making sure everything is in order with updates, and your day gets even busier after 5 because it is after 5 that counting begins. It is when emotions are raw because the candidates are there when the votes are being counted. So you have to find interviews. You have to perhaps chase a celebration party here and there. You might have to run away from a scuffle here and there because emotions are just so raw. People might not take a loss as well as others would. So it's a time to be smart as a journalist, but it's also an exciting experience. I must say this will be my 4th election, and perhaps this might be for me the slowest because the last one I was very much on the ground, but this one I will be a lot more indoors.
Well, I'm so proud of you, and I wish I could experience it through your eyes. I will be watching you on TV and listening to all the analysis. This is really a great time for Ghana to showcase its democracy to the world, and I am so proud of the process. You earlier you talked about the free SHS. And this week, I actually saw a video of a young man. I have forgotten which village he was from, but he went to one of the local secondary schools, senior high schools, and I think he got 8 A's. And so somebody interviewed him, and somehow the video got to the president, and now Ashesi University has given him a full ride. And so they made a thank you video in appreciation for the free SHS. So I think that the new Patriotic Party has an advantage when it comes to the free SHS.
Yeah, well, like I said earlier, it's a significant campaign tool that they have. And if you read the polls and surveys that have been done, I've looked at least 6 of them, including the last 2 that came out yesterday. The free SHS ranks pretty high. Now, if you look at what mattered to people in the previous election, corruption was a significant issue in the last election. Unemployment, security, roads, these were the big ticket items. In this election, education is the biggest ticket item. So free SHS is big on the minds of people, followed by the economy, followed then by jobs and roads, before you even get to corruption. Corruption is tracking pretty low in terms of top of mind items for voters in this election. And a lot of people are disappointed by that. But it also could mean that people basically have given up on the ability of the biggest parties to fight corruption, and so have decided to just stop bothering with it right now and focus on bread and butter issues. But I also always say corruption is bread and butter, because if somebody is being corrupted, the person is taking bread away from somebody. So free SHS, yes, like I said, very formidable. The opposition have also tried to eat into that, for instance, by saying they started the free SHS. There's been a huge debate about that. There are those who have said, well, if you started it, whose school fees were you paying? How come admission numbers were not what they are now? So the evidence doesn't add up to the claims. But the facts are these. Look, the NDC government started a project that they felt suited the educational system at the time and suited their budget at the time. So they started the day school project and also paying for some level of school fees through for some category of students. What the NPP brought was basically saying, look, we are clean slate, just show up in school, and that's all you require. Show up with your lunch box and your chop box and your trunk, and you're good to go. Okay, so that is what has hit the populace, well, most of them quite well, and they seem to be running with it. It is not without its flaws. There are complaints about the fact that private schools are struggling. There are complaints that the school system at the moment is not being run coherently. So we have students going to school in different tracks. So it's almost like a shift system of some sort. But most parents are quite happy with it. I mean, your kids don't have to pay school fees. You and I paid school fees, but those who are coming after us don't have to pay. So it's a significant advantage the government has. But the opposition also say, look, it's a good policy, but it can be done better than it has been done now. And we can show you how it can be done better. So education is a big ticket item. And of course, if you look at the fact that the running mate of the opposition party is a very well-respected educationist, was a former education minister, ran one of the largest public universities in the country for years, very successfully, I must add. It shows you just how important education is in this particular election.
Yes, and we have Sandra Kisi watching from YouTube and says, this chat is definitely really educating us better. Thank you, Sandra. Now, Amy, another YouTube viewer, says she likes the fact that unarmed security are allowed on location and not the police. I guess that probably helps to reduce the incidence of violence.
Yes, certainly. Like I said, around the voting area, no armed guards are allowed, like in terms of security. But it does not mean that there aren't armed security around. That's why I gave the gap within the voting area. So, for instance, if you were voting at, say, the Dansoman police station, it is a police station. But within the designated voting area, the security officers in charge will not carry guns. But if there are problems, there are armed security guards not too far away, but they will not be within the voting vicinity. That is not supposed to happen. And in my experience, I have not seen it happen yet, where you go to the voting area and you see people holding, soldiers or policemen holding guns and whatnot. No, that does not happen. You will see uniformed policemen, but they do not carry weapons.
Okay. Okay. Thanks for clarifying that. Now, Sylvia from Facebook is asking, is the government or the parties giving out masks to make voting easier, especially for those in the village?
I suspect so. I've seen a couple of news items where the parties are providing face masks as part of their campaign. But the rules have been made quite clear. If you show up without a face mask, you will not be allowed to vote. Perhaps the Electoral Commission might even carry their own set of masks to the electoral areas to provide for potential voters who do not have these, who do not have masks. But from what I saw on Monday on the day of special voting, no mask, no vote.
You know, Godfred, and I can actually visualize like the NDC and the NPP having masks so that their people are showing up in party masks. Would that be allowed?
It will be illegal. It's also against the law to show up in the voting area in any form of embossed party paraphernalia. You cannot show up in an NPP shirt. You cannot show up in an NDC shirt. You cannot show up in an NPP or NDC scarf or a face mask or spectacles or watch. Nothing of that sort. You're supposed to be neutral in the voting area.
That's impressive. Viewers, those not from Ghana, aren't you just impressed by all the sets of rules and order that goes with this process? Now, we have Stephen Asel from YouTube saying that it's great to listen to you too. Well, thanks, Stephen. Godfred is the one who is knowledgeable. I'm just following up and asking the question. Now, Godfred, it looks like this went by so fast, so soon. Our time is almost up. And so I'm just going to have to remove myself from the screen. We're not done yet, but I would like for you being on the ground and being as knowledgeable as you are to give a message to our viewers, whether it's a message for those who are going to vote or those who are learning about the process. I'm going to remove myself so that you can give them a message, and I'll be back.
Okay. What can I say? Let me just put it. Let me say this quickly. I think that for those who are going to vote in Ghana, it's an important decision that has to be made, and I'm sure everybody has what motivates them, the things that are important to them once they get into the voting booth. The most important thing is that we do this peacefully. It's an important civic responsibility. I know there are a lot of people in the voting demography as well who are a bit disillusioned. There's been significant talk of apathy. But if you are up to it, I do suggest that you pick up your voter ID card and show up at your polling station and cast your vote. After that, just go home. If you want to observe, you know what the process is, 5 p.m. You show up, you can just stand at the designated watching area and watch the counting happen. This is a process that has happened since 1992, and most of the time does happen peacefully. So I'm hoping that Monday will make Ghana proud again by voting peacefully. And by Tuesday, we should know who the president is, and we should know who parliamentarians are. That's all I'm asking for, peace.
That was a good message. Well, peace you're asking for indeed. Viewers, this is Godfred Akoto Boafo. He has interviewed and worked with presidents, celebrities, sports fans, and individuals from all walks of life. Recently, he was covering the UN General Assembly that was in 2019. He has worked all across Africa. He speaks Chinese. I mean, I cannot even stop bragging about my baby brother. He is brilliant. He is a sports fan. I tell you, the younger they get, the better they are. And so he is a much better version of me. I'm so proud of him. And I am thrilled that he has been able to shed such a positive image on the Ghana electoral process. Now, I'm pretty sure that the process is not perfect. Just like everything else, we have our kinks, but we are in the process of perfecting this from what Godfred is telling us. And so I'm very grateful for this information. Viewers, this is Marjy TV. This is Humanity Chat. If you're on here watching from YouTube, then I guess you already subscribed. If you're watching on Facebook, you can hop on and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Come back on Thursdays. Come listen to everyday conversations about humans. And also, we are available on all the major podcasts. So, you can find us on Apple Podcasts. You can find us on Spotify, Pandora, wherever podcasts are listened to. Listen to us. Give us a review if you enjoy our content. Every week, we talk about something different. We could be talking about politics. We could be talking about healthcare, societal issues, culture. So tune in, watch us, and spread the word. Tell people about us. Next week, we're going to have a guest. We're going to have a fun guest. She's a coach. Well, she doesn't coach anymore. She used to be the athletic director for Spartanburg Day School. Her name is Coach Rita Harrell, and she has a beautiful story to share with us about how she grew up in Pennsylvania. And guess what? Coach Rita was the athletic director when Zion Williamson was at Spartanburg Day School. She got to meet all these coaches from all these colleges during the recruiting process. She is going to share her life experience with us. So I invite you to join us 7 p.m. Eastern for our Ghana viewers and listeners. That will be midnight in Ghana. So if you cannot stay up, that's fine. You can always catch a replay on Marjy TV YouTube. So we're looking forward to having Coach Rita. And as I said earlier, this is Marjy Marj with Humanity Chats. And today our guest was Godfred Akoto Boafo. Thank you so much for joining us. And I look forward to seeing you all next week.